welcome. This is our special edition, and today we happen in Hawassa city. We are here to discuss about Ethiopia's access to the sea, and here with me is Mr. Deyamo Dale. Who is Mr. Deyamo Dale to talk about access to sea, Ethiopia's aspiration, a long time aspiration, but now it will be realized as we did the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. Stay tuned. First, let you introduce yourself to my audience, because my audience may ask, who is Mr. Deyamo? Because this is a critical and national agenda.
Okay, my name is Deyamo Dale Dagga. My educational field of study is political science and international relations. I was a counselor in Ministry of Foreign Affairs, European Department. From there, I went to Prime Minister's Office, Regional Affairs Department, Bureau Head for the Southern Region. From there, I joined the Ethiopian Parliament, the first parliament in the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia. From there, I joined the Southern Ethiopian region Bureau of Information, which later became Communication. So after that, I left government on pension and joined an NGO we call Global Peace Bank, which works on peace building, peace promotion, and reconciliation. And I am director for peace promotion and peace building in that NGO at present.
Ethiopia has lost its access to sea following the independence of Eritrea. And how do you think this impacted Ethiopia's access to the sea?
Historically, you know what happened was in Ethiopia was founded at the modern state. Of course, it has a long history, but as a modern state, which qualifies the definition of a state as per the Westphalia Treaty, Ethiopia got its international boundaries during Menelik II. And during that period, European colonial powers were partitioning Africa. And Ethiopia was the only country that survived from that partition. But what happened was these countries made sure that Ethiopia didn't get access to the sea. So they shared the areas surrounding Ethiopia, Ethiopia's access to the sea. You know, the Italians took Italian Somali, which was based on Mogadishu. The British took British Somaliland, which is today the Somaliland. The French took Djibouti. They called it French Somaliland. And the Italians first bought a foothold through a missionary at Assab, and then extended it upwards when the Turks left that area. And finally, the Italians wanted to colonize the whole of Ethiopia and declared war on Ethiopia. Ethiopian fought back and defeated Italy in 1888 or 1896 in European calendar at Adwa. And the treaty with Italy, after Italy's defeat, demarcated Ethiopia's borders. Now, what happened is the colonial attempt to colonize Ethiopia began with closing Ethiopia's way to the sea. These areas were foothold. I mean, they wanted to take the whole of Ethiopia. Later, a bit, they tried to, when they couldn't control the whole, they shared Ethiopia into spheres of influence. The British wanted to make sure that they had access to the Blue Nile. To Nile, of course, the Blue Nile includes Abai, but there is Takeze up there. Here we have Barwa Kobo or Sobat. So all these areas, they wanted to take hold of that. And now what I mean is the closing Ethiopia's access to the sea was a part of the strategy to end Ethiopian statehood as an African country. So now Ethiopia survived that without, breaking down. Then Italy, again, after 40 years from Adwa, Italy invaded Ethiopia in 1928 or 1936. And because Italy aligned itself with Germany and Japan in Europe, the British supported Ethiopia, and Italians were driven out of Eritrea in 1941. Now, the British stayed there for 10 years. After that, because Italy had committed a crime of aggression with Germany, it was decided that Italy should lose its colonies. When this happened, Ethiopia demanded Eritrea and Somalia. It claimed that these countries were part of Ethiopia because there was no other states. Formally states. There were nations, of course, but these countries were not states. So Ethiopia said, these belong to me, they have to return to me because Italy has to give up. So the UN established a commission on that. The commission talked to Eritreans, and upon that, it's recommended Eritrea be federated with Ethiopia for the sake of establishing sustainable peace in East Africa. That's what it says. And part of that sustainability is the precondition for that sustainable peace is Ethiopia's right of access to the sea. Now, with that, Eritrea was federated to Ethiopia. But some 10 years again, the Ethiopian emperor didn't like the democratic nature of Eritrean Federation. They had political parties there, they had free press there, they had trade unions, and they had their own language. They used, in addition to Amharic, the federal language, they had the right to use Tigrinya and Arabic. So they didn't like this. And the Eritrean parliament dissolved itself by the instigation of the Ethiopian Empire. And now that gave the Eritreans the reason for rebellion. They said, well, the United Nations had decided federation, not unitary state, we're under a monarchy. Now, this paved the way for Eritrean rebellion. Now, a lot of countries which were first demanding, including Egypt, which demanded the Massawa area, lowland areas, started to help Eritrean rebellion. The first was ELF. Finally, EPLF got the upper hand. And what happened is, while Eritrean rebellion was going on, the TPLF was established in Tigray. And both parties, both national liberation movements, as they call themselves, cooperated in the field to defeat Ethiopian army. And both of them overthrew the then Ethiopian government. Now the point is, these are rebels. Both are rebels. They were aligning, they were fighting together. They were allies. Now, so what happened is, when TPLF led EPRDF, it's organized other proxies, let's say. It's acted on behalf of Ethiopia and allowed the EPLF to take all Ethiopian territory. Now, there is the problem is that it didn't have legitimacy to do that. The Ethiopian statehood is different from Ethiopian government of the time. The Ethiopian state consisted of territories up to the sea. Now, to give up part of that territory required a negotiated settlement. And who should negotiate? That is a government which has a mandate, popular mandate. Internationally, unless you have a mandate, you could form a de facto government, but you can't act on behalf of the whole state. Now, that is why we question, many Ethiopians question the legitimacy of that secession.
And what was Egyptians or Egypt's role in separating Eritrea from Ethiopia?
Well, I mean, it's their plan, rather it's an Egyptian plan to have Ethiopia, to have a weak Ethiopia. If possible, I mean, they will have no Ethiopia at all. Or if there is Ethiopia, it should be an Ethiopia that can't use its water resources. So that's such Ethiopia has to be weak. If Ethiopia gets access to the sea, it wouldn't be weak. And if Ethiopia develops, it will use its resources. I mean, they lost this game when Ethiopians financed the Kurds through their own money. And in addition, Ethiopia managed to organize the upper riparian states, the upper riparian states, which signed and ratified the Entebbe Agreement. Now, that is the only law that governs the Nile Basin. But Egypt insists what it calls Eastern Nile is different, but Ethiopia says, no, there is no difference. We have to agree like other transboundary rivers are governed by international treaties, not bilateral treaties. So the international treaty now is Entebbe Agreement. Egypt doesn't want to sign that, but Ethiopia has defeated Egypt in that front. So they are trying to, the only card they have is to use Eritrea to destabilize Ethiopia and make it harder for Ethiopia to have access to the sea. And it's working as if Ethiopia gets access to the sea, Egypt loses everything. This is a zero-game politics. It's very backward way of defining one's national interest. You don't define your national interest as an outcome of the days of your enemy. I mean, your enemy has to be there, and you negotiate with it. But Egypt wants to kill Ethiopia in order to promote its national interest, and Eritrea is becoming a pawn in this chess game.
Why Eritrea opposes Ethiopia's demand to the access to the sea?
If possible, I mean, they will have no Ethiopia at all. Or if there is Ethiopia, it should be an Ethiopia that can't use its water resources. So that's such Ethiopia has to be weak. If Ethiopia gets access to the sea, it wouldn't be weak. And if Ethiopia develops, it will use its resources. They lost this game when Ethiopians financed the Kurds through their own money. And in addition, Ethiopia managed to organize the upper riparian states, the upper riparian states, which signed and ratified the Entebbe Agreement. Now, that is the only law that governs the Nile Basin. But Egypt insists what it calls Eastern Nile is different, but Ethiopia says, no, there is no difference. We have to agree like other transboundary rivers are governed by international treaties, not bilateral treaties. So the international treaty now is Entebbe Agreement. Egypt doesn't want to sign that, but Ethiopia has defeated Egypt in that front. So they are trying to, the only, I mean, card that I have is to use Eritrea to destabilize Ethiopia and, I mean, make it harder for Ethiopia to have access to the sea. And it's working as if Ethiopia gets access to the sea, Egypt loses everything. This is a zero-game politics. It's very backward way of defining one's national interest. You don't define your national interest as an outcome of the days of your enemy. I mean, your enemy has to be there, and you negotiate with it. But Egypt wants to kill Ethiopia in order to promote its national interest, and Eritrea is becoming a pawn in this chess game.
And finally, if you have any message to my audience, you're welcome.
Especially to the public. Certain elites may be hostile. They may launch negative propaganda. You know, some have begun, I mean, mouthpieces of enemies have begun calling Ethiopia an empire, which is going to disintegrate soon. And this psychological propaganda must be fought. We have to fight this as Ethiopians because we don't have any other country. Right. Ethiopia is a multi-ethnic state. And a lot of countries in the world are multi-ethnic states. The problems we face today were problems that have been faced since Menelik when he ruled this country. Everyone, every party which takes power in Ethiopia faces the problem of access to the sea. With change of, you don't change this issue with change of government. And in this world, Ethiopians shouldn't even give a chance for outsiders that want our country get disintegrated. Power struggle is normal. That power struggle shouldn't go to breaking a power state. So Ethiopians should be gentle, far-sighted. They have to bury their differences when this issue comes to this. And one important point, this issue shouldn't be taken as a diversion, as some activists call this, not a diversion. As I said, this idea was being fought for during the EPRDF time too. It's not an invention of this government. So those people who say diversion are not really honest people. So Ethiopians should galvanize, should support this cost as an existential national issue.
Mr. Deyamo Dalle, our usual partner, thank you very much for your insight and for your time as well.
Yeah, thank you for giving me the chance, for having me on this show. And it's my duty also to cooperate on such issues, because when I give advice to others, I should do it myself.
Dear viewers, this is all about our discussion for this edition, and I'm sure you have got some important insight from this discussion. And thank you for watching OBN Horn of Africa. Till the next edition, bye.